Good morning. I'm Slater Barr, President of the Dyersburg-Dyer County Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to this morning's Legislative Coffee. You know, COVID-19 is impacting all of our lives, our personal lives, our businesses, and our local, state, and national governments. Today we want to thank our guest, who will be introduced later in the program by our Chamber's Government Relations Chairman, Bob Kirk. We want to thank them for taking time to share with us how the coronavirus is impacting Tennessee state government and therefore the state's supporting programs for Dyersburg and Dyer County. And thank you all for adhering to our requirements for wearing a mask. Now, I know that it's a little difficult to drink coffee through a mask. So, now that you're seated and everything and you're appropriately social distancing, you can kind of pull it down and everything. We just really ask that when you leave your seat and everything, that you put your mask back on. With 3 deaths in Dyer County and the spiking number of cases in our community, we all need to do our part to keep ourselves and our loved ones safe, but also keep our economy going. And I firmly believe the two are not mutually exclusive. Indeed, they are supportive of each other. We have to do both. And thank you to our mayors, Chris Young, our county mayor, John Holden, City of Dyersburg, Pam Mabry Newbern, and John McFarland Trimble for their leadership in this critical time locally. We are streaming on Facebook Live today, and so we will be taking questions not only from you in the audience, but those from our online audience as well. At this time, I would like to ask our board member, Paul Carson, to come up and give the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by our Government Relations Chairman, Bob Kirk. So remain standing after the invocation. Paul?
Let us pray. Our most gracious, kind, loving Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this another day, for life itself. We thank you, Lord, for this being able to gather today, Lord, and just to hear how the leadership in our county and our state and across this United States and the world, Lord, as you guide us, and we pray that we'll always strive to put you first in all that we do. We thank you again for your many blessings. We pray that you guide us this day as we give you thanks, and help us to always remember that. Let us be honest in this game of life. As we give you thanks, amen.
Please join me in our pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Good morning. Welcome again to our legislative coffee. It looks a little different than it did on February the 10th of this year when we had our last legislative coffee. We had about 80 or 90 people here, and we were much closer then, but I understand where we are in this new world, this new norm as I understand it, and we appreciate you being here. On behalf of the Governmental and Legislative Committee, I welcome you again to the Lanham Center. Before I bring our speakers up today, our legislators, I just want to make a couple of comments about what's been going on in this world and in Tennessee. February the 5th, we had our legislative coffee, and these guys, Senator Jackson and Representative Grills, were so enthusiastic about the new session. The Governor Lee had made his State of the State speech. He had proposed some new programs. He was coming off of a banner year in economic input for the state of Tennessee with a large surplus. And some of these legislators, I can't see it, yeah I do, and mostly some of them had some pet projects they wanted funded out of the budget. And all of that suddenly stopped under the new norm, I think. So we're in a new world, as we all know that today. Thank God, Lord, that we had these guys up there representing us who have been so vocal in their representation of this district, their values for this district, and what's good for our district. And we appreciate that so very much. Now, Governor Lee had proposed raises for teachers and raises for state workers, pet projects across the state. Right, one in particular, right, couple, Ed Jackson and Dyersburg. But we had the rainy day fund. I've never been a big fan of the rainy day fund, but now I am solely committed to the rainy day fund. It was over $1 billion, and I always wondered why we needed so much, but I didn't know that COVID-19 was coming down the road. But they have worked, the departments have reduced their budgets, I think, from 7 to 10% or more, and they've worked to continue to make sure that Tennessee is one of the leading states, is the leading state in fiscal responsibility for the operation of the government and for its citizens. We appreciate all of you being here today, and I'm going to ask now if Senator Jackson will come up, and he will make a presentation, and then Rusty will be up, and then we'll open it up for some questions. I'm sure that you still have some left over from February. Thank you for being here. Senator?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Bob. Okay. Very glad to be here, and everybody in the back there, okay? These are, as Bob said, strange times, and it's been a challenge this year in the state legislature in Tennessee and, of course, across our country and around the world. And it's just amazing what's going on. But glad to see everybody here. I think we have every seat filled, but about 3, so we have full house. Bob did do a little recap on the last session, what we did, but I would like to go a little more in depth with some of it. We go back in January the 14th. We went into session, 102nd part of the 111th General Assembly, and it was at that time, as Bob said, the state had a huge surplus, over $1 billion. And we wondered, one of the people in finance said, one of the biggest problems we're going to have is, what are we going to do with all this excess money? How are we going to do it? Because we have a Copeland cap here in Tennessee where we can only spend so much on different things. So how are we going to divvy that money out, or what were we going to do with it? So COVID took care of that. So we recessed. We went into session. We recessed in mid-March to June the 1st. And because of COVID, we anticipated that it could get ugly. Well, we didn't have any idea it was going to get as ugly as it did. So we came back in June the 1st to finish balancing the budget and passing a few critical bills. We adjourned June the 19th at 3 o'clock a.m. on a Friday morning. It was a long session, longest than I've been. It may be a record as to how long we did spend in session. But 3 a.m. Friday morning on the 19th, we did adjourn Sadi Da, ended the 111th General Assembly. The budget is $39.4 billion, and we reduced it because of COVID. It ate our surplus, put it in $1 billion to $1 billion and $1.5 billion shortfall. I'd like to read just a few things that plans to balance the budget is what we did. This is the plan to balance the budget. We're adjusting to immediate impact of pandemic on state revenues of up to $1.5 billion through the end of the next fiscal year, planning for the worst and hoping for the best. And because Tennessee has a history of being the best managed state, one of the best managed states in the country, and we're one of the top 4 or 5 best managed states, fiscally managed states in the country. So we had almost no debt. We had large surpluses and just a very well managed state. So when we do come out of this, and we're coming out of it, we will be one of the first ones to come out and come out a lot better than most other states in the country. Back in March, the administration, General Assembly agreed to $397 million in recurring reductions of the onset of COVID-19, and the administration is proposing an additional $284 million in reductions for fiscal year 2021. The state got creative and spread the budget over what has happened to the state over a 3-year period instead of trying to take care of it all in 1 year. So here's some of the things that the state has done. The state multi-year spending plan provides full funding for the basic education program for K through 12 schools, contributions to the state employee pension fund, state payments for employee health insurance. So these are all being taken care of. We're not having to do without with these topics. Debt service requires, they're all debt service is being paid is on time. Multi-year reductions will be achieved in part through a reduction in new capital projects and funding for capital maintenance. So these are some of the things they think. These are if capital projects not necessary. If the maintenance can be put off a little longer, then they're going to not spend the money on those at this point in time. Authorizing bonds for existing capital projects previously funded with cash. And because Tennessee is so well run, we're one of the few states that has a AAA rating with all the lending agencies. So all three of them. So we're going to because we can borrow money extremely cheap right now, it's going to be we won't have to use the cash to do that. So we're going to borrow some money through the bonding. The state has reserve funds totaling $4 billion. A lot of the departments had reserves in different departments of the state government had some reserves. So they're going to take some of those reserves and put into to help balance the budget this year and the next 2 years. So that's the budget. That's and I'll be glad to answer questions on that. Some of the bills that we passed and did not pass. Well, I know you all heard about the heartbeat bill. That was one that was a challenge. Protect states most vulnerable. And here's what the bill does. It bans abortion if the heartbeat is detected around 6 weeks, requires an ultrasound, prohibits physicians from performing an abortion based on sex, race, disability diagnosis, and exception is for medical emergencies, not rape or incest. Another bill, Public Chapter 574, aids efforts to recruit doctors to work in Tennessee rural health clinics. I know there's several rural health clinics in this area. There's some based here in Dyersburg, and they go into Lake County and other counties around here that are rural. It's very, very important we get health care into those areas. So the rural health clinics by allowing rural health clinics to employ a physician. Before that, they couldn't employ a physician, so now they can, and have a physician to oversee the nurse practitioners that can is to their work and what they can do. So it provides more health care for the rural areas, which was very important. Telehealth did not pass. COVID really brought that to the forefront. Telehealth, people can't get out, can't go to the doctor, and they're still sick. They have to have medical help. So telehealth was important, so it did not pass for some reason. Between the House and the Senate, the conference committees couldn't get their talking points together, so that did not pass. Hopefully that will pass in the next session in the 112th General Assembly starting in January of next year. Slowpoke law, I don't know if you've heard about the slowpoke law. It's where if there's a divided highway like 412 or 51, it's a 4-lane divided highway, that the person who is going slower must stay in the right lane unless you're going to pass. So that's the slowpoke law. So that should take place on I-40, which is almost both lanes go about the same speed and about 60 miles an hour now if you're behind an 18-wheeler. Which is they're called in the freight, so I don't complain, but it is frustrating sometimes when you get behind a long line of people in the left lane and you can't pass, but that's what the slowpoke law does. One thing I'm proud of and happy to report is that there was $210 million allocated for cities and counties, and I have some numbers here. Dyer County is let me just tell you what this is. $210 $10 million was going to go to all the cities and the counties in the state, and there's a formula that it's going to be divided equally between all the counties and cities across the state. For example, Dyer County is getting $989,928 to spend for whatever they want to spend it on, and it originally was going to be COVID-related expenses. But now we came back and said, no, we need to be able. They need to be able to spend it on whatever they need to, infrastructure, education, whatever they want to put it into. So that's Dyer County. Lauderdale County is getting, Lake County and Lauderdale County are two distressed counties. So they're getting actually an extra $245,000 on top of what they would get because of they are distressed. So the 15 distressed counties across the state are getting an extra $245,000. Crockett's getting $766,000. City of New Bern is getting $103,000. Dyersburg City is getting $391,000, and Trimble is $43,000. So these funds are going to really, really help these cities and towns in the state, and especially here in Dyersburg and Dyer County. Because of what happened in Minnesota with George Floyd, the Tennessee law enforcement is looking at the way that they are training our police and sheriff's department deputies. I'm on the POST Commission, which is Police Officer Standards and Training, and I've been on there about a year and a half, and we oversee oversight of the standards and the training that happens there. So this is something that was, I think, really, really needed to be done. We need to look at how we train. We're giving them the tools that they need to train, whatever. It's just we're trying to give them what they need to be able to be trained for the police and the sheriff's deputies. So some of the changes policy changes that we want to make immediately is use of force policies. How should we use the force in the police department? So they're going to actually go from 400 hours of training at the training academy over in Donaldson to 488 hours. So they're adding some additional time and to put in some of these extra training methods that need to be taught. Access to decertification. There's a report. It's a national report that goes out, but it doesn't follow a lot of officers. There's some officers that are you got productive but there are some bad policeman officers out there, and some of those officers, they'll go work at this police station and say here in Dyersburg, then they may go to Middle Tennessee or East Tennessee once they've had an issue and that issue doesn't follow them. So this is going to be something that will be stepped up and where we can keep up with the officers that are not the good actors. As I said, training is going to go an additional 88 hours. De-escalation techniques are going to be taught. How to de-escalate an issue, whatever the police officers come across, maybe somebody who's mentally ill, somebody who's on drugs or whatever, to be able to how to identify that and are the best techniques to de-escalate that, and dealing with public protest. So those are some of the things that are going to be changed in the way we're training our police officers. Beginning school, that's a big topic. I did attend a meeting here in Dyersburg with Mayor Young and some others, Mayor Holden. We were there to see what Dyersburg City Schools are going to do and how they're going to reopen the schools. And I'm very proud of what they have done. This is something that they handed out exactly, black and white, how it's going to be done, what they're going to do. And I've not seen any other county or city do that at this point in time. So city schools here in Dyersburg are something to really, really be proud of because they've getting a handle on things. And I've got some other things, but I'm going to let Rusty come up and give a report, and then we'll be glad to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jackson, for leaving a leg there in that chicken bucket for me. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity, and it's indicative that we have an informed population, so that y'all can call us to voice your concerns, what you'd like to see done, what you'd like to see stopped, what you'd like to see going forward. And I always want to give a shout out to Senator Jackson here. His heart's this big. I mean, he's got the biggest heart of anybody in Nashville, and everybody in Nashville knows that. Whenever you mention his name, people always talk about how good a man he is how sweet he is, and how he will give you the shirt off his back, and he really is that type of individual. So it's a joy to work with him. Right off the bat, I just want to thank y'all so much for giving me the opportunity to represent this district and the fine people here. My family's been here a long, long time, and I hope I'm here a long, long time, and I hope I'm buried here whenever that long time ends. But I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity. Obviously, we had a lot of stress that hit us since the last time we were here at the first legislative coffee. You know, we had Senator Jackson alluded to the idea of the raises and all the different things we're going to do with all these extra monies, and then now it's gone down the tube. And then you have to start making cuts. You have to start prioritizing things, which is probably something that everyone in their household has to do on a yearly basis, monthly basis from time to time. So government needs to do the same thing, and maybe this was a time for correction. I'm trying to find lemonade in these bucket of lemons. You know, then stores shut down, small businesses suffered, restaurants hurt, and we started realizing how lucky we had it. We started realizing how good it was to be able to jump in the car and run down and get supper if you didn't feel like cooking at night. And I think after going through that, we had this opportunity to sit back and maybe realize, reevaluate where we were and how blessed we are as Americans and Tennesseans and Dyer Countyans. So I hope because of this, we have gained a deeper appreciation for what the amenities that we do have and the position that we are in our lives. You know, families got to benefit from it greatly, though. Mamas and daddies, and they weren't being pulled here and there. They got to spend time with their kids and all. So there are some good things that come from this, even though there was a lot more bad. I never realized how important a haircut was, and I still don't. But when the ladies and the gentlemen that from beauty shops and barber shops weren't able to open, man, I started getting phone calls. I remember one night, it was a Tuesday night, I believe, I was answering text messages and messages on the internet up to past midnight. These ladies, they wanted to see their stores open. Then people were like, I can't get a haircut. So pedicures, manicures, haircuts are an important thing. And then church services. Man, our country was founded upon religious freedoms, and I believe the faith in God was the backbone of our country, and we lost that. And we didn't lose it, but we were taken away from it. And I believe a lot of us have realized the importance of a good church family and how good it is to be able to come back and encompass around your friends, and you'll get that pat on the back and that word of encouragement from Sunday to Wednesday. So those are some things that I think we may have really taken for granted, but yet we get this opportunity to reset and reevaluate and start over. Obviously, Senator Jackson mentioned several things that we dealt with. One thing that really has bothered me was the cath lab closing here in Dyersburg. Senator Jackson, I've talked over and over and over again about the importance of the cath lab. We ran a resolution just recognizing the importance of the cath lab and what it does for the community and the health care of our community. Mr. Kent Jatun and my mom and dad's neighbor, Brother Doug Ellingsworth, their lives were saved because of the cath lab here in Dyersburg. And if that thing doesn't reopen, the health care of Dyer County and Northwest Tennessee is at a disadvantage, and we need to make sure that we put all the pressure, and I have tried to put as much pressure, Senator Jackson's tried to put as much pressure to make sure that we get this thing back where it needs to be. Obviously, the heartbeat bill was a huge passion of mine, and there's maybe the naysayers out there that would be concerned that it will not stand judicial scrutiny. but Georgia passed one last year, and it's withstood. And I believe this is one of the most intricate parts of government to protect those who are unable to protect themselves, and we need to start at the unborn. So I'm excited to see that we were able to pass that there towards the end of the session back in June. Brandon Ogles is a representative from Middle Tennessee. He had an idea that everybody in West Tennessee loves guns. We're all Second Amendment, crazies over here, some people call us. But Brandon Ogles had this idea that let's work with TWRA and let's try to do a little research and see what's best for teaching children how to handle guns and what age is the most appropriate for us. So TWRA is going to have a study, and we're going to try to implement and incorporate with our Department of Education gun safety in our schools, and what age appropriate class is. We're not sure yet, but I want to applaud Brandon Ogles so we can gun proof our children so that we don't have unintended consequences from a firearm that a child's not aware of how to handle. The fully funding of the BEP, that's a word that's used. When you hear the word fully funded, what does that mean? Well, that means that it got everything that it needed or required. Maybe not everything it needed, but it got everything that it required. Plus, it was adjusted for inflation and for retirement, and that's a huge accomplishment considering where we are. The reimbursement rate for ambulances, our local hospitals, our local ambulance services, man, they were struggling. So the reimbursement rate for Medicaid and TennCare has been raised to a more equitable amount. There was a cap put upon municipalities. So if you have a municipality that is requiring ticket quotas, that chief or sheriff can be fined with a misdemeanor or charged with a misdemeanor just for putting that type of burden upon his officers. And then in bringing up officers, I want to applaud our officers. Sheriff Box, Chief Isabel here in Dyersburg, they've been through a lot the past couple of weeks. They don't get the credit they deserve. And I'm going to encourage you, when you go out and you see a police officer, when you see a sheriff's officer, just stop and tell them how much you appreciate him. And tell them how much that you appreciate them putting their life on the line for our protection. My wife and I and my girls, we try to do that regularly. And I didn't realize it meant as much to them until I started doing it more often. So I would want to encourage you to do the same. In 2022, we're going to have on our ballot the right to work. It's a right to work, a constitutional amendment that will recognize Tennessee as a right to work state. And that passed overwhelmingly. Senator Jackson mentioned the $210 million that's going to the cities and counties, but in that $210 million, there's also a $15 million broadband grant that's going to go to help rural areas receive the broadband. And I don't know how many here have high-speed internet at their home, or at least it's available. Okay, so we have a lot more here than there is in other places. So we're a little more fortunate. I can't get it at my house, and I live a mile from Food Rat in New Bern. But that's something that's extremely important. We raised the minimum wage to buy tobacco to 21. That kind of works with the federal standards. The 32nd Judicial District was added in Middle Tennessee. Judge Childress is always on top of the judicial redistricting or the opportunity to have a judicial redistricting. And because we created that new judicial new judiciary, that's going to take a lot of the pressure of trying to pull some of the population lacking from West Tennessee to Middle Tennessee, because there was concern that we may lose our judicial district here in Dyer County and Lake County. But because of this, I'm pretty confident that that's going to take the pressure off. Would you agree?
That would help.
That would help a whole lot.
Tremendously.
Now, some of the lawyers in the room and may understand that a little more, but that's a big deal. There was a law that was passed this year that's going to allow robots to potentially deliver products with Amazon, UPS, FedEx. So essentially, what they're going to do is they're going to go into a neighborhood stop, open the doors, let the robots out, get on the sidewalk, and they're going to drive. They're going to go to wherever, 922 High Street, go up to the door, unload your package, turn around and go back. I saw a video on it, and you can get it on YouTube. It's about a 60-second video that's extremely, now Tennessee, this is a prototype. This is something that we're just doing here in Tennessee, but it's the future, I guess. It was very, very neat to watch that and to see what the opportunities coming down the pipe are. The COVID Liability Protection Act that we did not pass, that was something that was, I guess that was the last thing that wasn't passed that Thursday night. We got out of there. There was a lot of things that were voted on that day. That's such an important part of our business community. When a mom and pop shop that they do $200,000 or $300,000 a year, and they have someone come through and they say they think they've caught COVID in that store or that shop, whatever it is. The next thing you know, they're getting a summons in the mail for a lawsuit. Well, they call their insurance agents and say, well, we're getting sued for potentially contracting COVID or helping spread COVID. And the insurance agent's going to say, well, I'm sorry, your policy doesn't cover that. So at that time, that small business is caught between a rock and a hard place. They've got to go hire a lawyer, and then they've got to fight. They got to fight like crazy. And at least that's the way I'm understanding it. At least that's the way a lot of small businesses that I've talked to are fearful of. And because we didn't get this thing passed, these small businesses are under the gun, so to speak. So it's extremely important that we have a special session to go back and deal with this, because small businesses don't have the cash to put up for $30,000, $40,000 for a lawyer so they can fight to prove that they didn't do something. All you've got to do is accuse someone and you can sue them, and that is extremely unfortunate. So I agree. I'm 100% in favor of going back into session. I'm assuming Senator Jackson would feel the same way, because our small businesses, that's the backbone of West Tennessee, Tennessee, and the United States. So we need to do everything we can to protect our small businesses. And I believe something would be better than nothing. We went in that night, we thought there were 73 votes. There was 46 when the tally came down. Now, we thought there was going to be another conference committee that's going to go back, but that didn't happen. So obviously we're here, but I was talking to the Speaker's office yesterday, and it's pretty much a given we're going back. And I would encourage you, if there's anything that you have, me and Mr. Bradshaw have talked about it in depth, but I would love to hear your thoughts, your input, your ideas, because this is a touchy, tricky subject. So please reach out to us and let us know what there is that you may have, what ideas you may have to help us alleviate this. I'm going to stop right there and we'll just take questions or whatever, Mr. Kirk, you want.
I think your live streaming
We are going to go in on August the 10th. Well, I just found out.
Did they?
Yeah,
Okay.
I hadn't even had a chance to call her.
Why do you think that the COVID liability bill did not pass when it seems to be a no-brainer? What was the objection to it, to give these small businesses and people in business this liability protection?
Retroactivity was a big issue going back to the first part of March, because the first executive order didn't take place until the end of March. And because of that, there were people that felt that it was unconstitutional to go back in time to change the rules after the game had already been played.
And that's going to require a special session to go back, and you're going to go back up there and all the expense of having a special session. But it looks like the governor's going to call it, don't you think?
I just found out late last night that we're going back August the 10th for a special session for that particular reason, and the importance of it. The governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker all agreed we've got to have that bill should have passed then while we were there, but it just didn't happen. I wish we'd have stayed another day or two to make sure that bill and a couple of others did make it through, such as the telehealth bill.
And I believe that this special session is not going to be just dealing with that one object. We may go ahead and deal with a couple of others, and I think telehealth is one of them.
I think that's a possibility that there'll be other bills that will be heard there. But yeah, you're right. It's frustrating because we should have done it that night, but it didn't happen
One
because
other
of.
comment is the right to work has been the lifeblood for employers in the state of Tennessee for economic success for years and years and years. And to get it embedded in the Constitution is the right thing to do, and I appreciate y'all's support, and I know the business community across this state should appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, when you go back into session and you're looking at the, the COVID liability, what's going to change? The ones that didn't want to go back retroactive, how's that going to change where this bill can pass now? What's being discussed?
Well, exactly, Mr. Carson, what's being discussed is not really sure yet. I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion with leadership between both the houses and the governor's office on this subject, because they wouldn't be a special session because it's so important for small businesses, all businesses, healthcare, you name it. It's so important. I was very, very disappointed it didn't go through at that point in time, but I am glad that it will take place. Exactly what's going to happen, how they're going to come together, but I guarantee you we're not going to leave there until it does. And exactly how it's going to form up, it's hard to say.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your support.
The retroactivity part was the Achilles heel, and that had a severability clause in it, which essentially was going to cut that out if it was deemed unconstitutional. So the rest of the bill would actually have stood. It just wasn't going to be able to go back retroactive back until the first part of March. So if it had passed, something would have been much better than nothing.
Will this new bill include a protection for secondary and post-secondary institutions, higher ed institutions?
I'm very certain it will.
Yeah. The purpose of the bill, of course, is if you're doing like this morning, came in required to wear a mask. Our temperature was taken. We have sanitation places here, and so you're taking precautions to prevent COVID in this here. Other businesses are doing the same thing. My wife has a store in Jackson. She's doing the same thing. Mask required. She has sanitation station, and as you walk in, she bought a thermometer and is taking people's temperature too. So you see that all the time. I bet I've had my temperature taken more lately than I have since I was born. But that's so important that we cover all facets of every business, health, as I said, healthcare, education, small business, large business, or whatever.
And with that, I brought these little pamphlets here that had every legislator and their telephone number in here, their email. Take one of these home. Obviously, you can access it on the internet, but take one of these home if you would. And if you've got questions, jot them down. If you got ideas, just reach out to different legislators across the state. And if they don't take your call, let us know, and we'll find out why. Another thing that we did, though, that I thought was pretty much, I thought it was a given, was 911 dispatchers were not required to be able to administer or tell someone how to administer CPR when they made the 911 call. So that is fixing to be a new normal, that every dispatcher is going to be able to tell someone over the telephone how to administer CPR in case there is an emergency, because most people don't call 911 unless there is.
Thank you. Thank you for the report.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. We appreciate you guys being here this morning. We appreciate your service and your dedication to the good things that happen for Dyer County and the state of Tennessee. At this time, before we adjourn, let's call on Mayor Young. Is Holden here? John Holden, to give us a report on anything that the county might want to relate to us about the county, please.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk, and to our representative and senator, thank you for being here today. We appreciate all you do for us in Nashville. Before I get into what's going on in the county right now, I just want to say to you two, I know sometimes things get put on the back burner, and I understand that totally with this COVID-19 deal. Please don't forget about our compensation for state inmates. We've been trying to get that raised for many years, and I know the ambulance reimbursement was critical to that industry. Jail reimbursements is critical to counties all across our state. We're being way underfunded for that. And as y'all know, I think the state, when they house their own, it costs like $170 a day or something like that, and they pay us $47.50, I think. So if we could just get that up a little bit, it sure would help our budget a little bit here in the county. So both of them alluded to the money that the county's getting that used to have some strings attached. It used to have to be used for buildings. It could not be used for a new building, but you could retrofit or remodel buildings, things like that. Technology, there's a lot of things it could be used for, and now they've taken all those strings off. So, so far we have not included that money in our budget because it's not a reoccurring fund, so we don't feel like we can go out and give raises and things like that if the money's not going to be reoccurring to us. So my goal is to use that money wisely to do things with it that will generate a savings to the county in the future. One thing I've been wanting to do since I've been mayor is to rework the heating and cooling system in our courthouse. It's very expensive to operate. It's 3 floors. You can go in some mornings and it'll be really cold in the basement and be too hot on the second floor. So having that balanced out, I think, and upgraded will create a savings to the county that we'll see for many years. Even if we were borrowing the money to do it, the payback is expected to be less than 5 years. So it would be a good investment even if we didn't have funds from the state to do. So that's one of my goals, to get that done in the next year, and hopefully we can see that happen. I'm appalled when I go around the courthouse and I see little space heaters set out, and these girls are cold. And I feel for them, but it hurts me to see that we're running air conditioning in one place and heater in another. And I know just that don't work out too good when it comes to paying the electric bill. So I want to do things with it that create savings for the county that we can take advantage of for many, many years. So moving on, as you all know, last Friday afternoon, the governor punted the responsibility to wear masks to county mayors across 89 of our counties. I don't know whether I was glad he did that or not. I know there's a lot of counties who, there's hot spots in different counties. Dyer County is on the rise, and we are unfortunately leading Northwest Tennessee in the number of active cases, a thought that is very disturbing to me. My personal feeling is that if I mandate masks, we would have such a rebellion, and the police would be very hard, and it would be very difficult for them to police that. So at this time, I want to still encourage everyone and do my best to continue doing that, to stress the importance of wearing a mask, and hopefully people will abide and we won't have to go to a mandate. Now, I'll tell you today that the numbers could get to a point where I think we need to have a mandate on masks. I certainly hope it does not, and I don't see that happening right now. Our number of testing over the last 6 days went from in the 90s to the 80s to the 70s, and then day before yesterday went to 51, and yesterday went to 31. So people with symptoms is declining, but we're going to see over the next 10 days probably a pretty good spike, because 10 days ago the testing was near 100 every day. So, that's about a 10-day lag in getting our reporting back. So when the governor gave us that authority last Friday afternoon, I had the weekend to think about what I needed to do. And as I was thinking about that, I thought back of my uncle was the very smart man, I always thought, in Trimble, and he was building a house one time, and he had just started, and a guy came by and said, Ed said, you know, I hear you're going to build a house. I said, you don't know nothing about building a house. He said, well, you don't have to, because every SOB comes by going to tell you how. So, you know, that's kind of like my job's been the last 10 days. Everybody comes by is going to tell me how to do it, and that's fine. I'm glad to take the suggestions, but they're so broad, and you've got to put science behind it, and I'm a strong believer in that. And I get hit with civil liberties. They don't want to wear a mask because of that. Bob don't want to wear a mask. I understand that. Again, I think that it's best if we can stay with it, to just strongly urge it and not mandate it. But it may come the other way. So anyway, after thinking about that all weekend, I decided Monday morning to start working on a healthcare task force. And I've called several in the community to serve on that. We have industry representative, banks, we have education, we have small business, retailers. I'm trying to think who else. But anyway, we've got a broad array of people who are willing to serve on this task force. What I want to do is bring in those people who are in our community, who deal with, in some cases, many employees. ARMCO is serving, has someone serving, First Citizen Security Bank, Dyersburg State, Dyersburg City Schools, Dyer County Schools, all have representatives there. So I'll be listening to their feedback, and we'll be trying to evaluate and determine what our best steps are going forward. So I do appreciate all of your help in this, your prayers and your concern, because I am very concerned. If you see me out, you're probably going to see me with a mask. If I'm in a store or in close quarters, if I can't social distance, I'm going to try my best to have this mask on and lead by example, and I hope you'll do the same. So thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to take those. Thank you. Okay.
Are there any representatives from law enforcement or dispatch that are on this task force with you? I know we're flooded with calls of people who are concerned about social distancing, and those sometimes have delayed response to priority calls. Are they included in this task force?
I don't have a representative right now from that, but I feel like I will be their representative. But let me say this. I tried to limit this so that we could, meet in person. And right now I'm still planning on meeting in person. If we grow and grow and grow, we can't meet in person. And I think we lose some of our effectiveness if we can't. So we're going to meet the first time. I've had many other individuals contact me wanting to serve, and I appreciate that very much. However, once you get to too many, it can be a problem. So we're at about 16 right now. We're going to meet our first meeting, and hopefully sometime next week, and then we're going to evaluate that. If I don't feel like law enforcement's getting the right representation, then we'll address that.
Thank you, Chris, and appreciate your leadership in this dilemma that we're in. Young lady?
This is for you, Mayor. I just appreciate the task force and completely understand what you're saying about the size of it. At some point, would we, as the community members, know who those representatives are so that if we do have questions or concerns, we could address it with them?
It certainly will, yes. We should complete that today, and I've been working with it. Like I said, I started Monday. I sent feelers out to different industries. Slater's been very helpful with me in selecting someone from industry and retail, and our school superintendents have been helpful. I have each one of them and a representative from the school system, so I could involve different aspects of our educational system. So I hope to complete that before the day's out. It could be Monday, but I hope to complete it before the day's out. And right now we're looking at about 16 members. Chairman Utendahl is one of our members, and we have a doctor, we have a health department, we have the administrator of the hospital, and so forth. I think if somebody else had a question. Maybe not now. Thank you again.
Thank you, Chris. Did we have any questions? Anna, come in. Okay, from the stream. Okay, thank you. Let me say a couple other things, and then we'll close this meeting out. Let's continue to keep Tommy Allman and his family in our prayers, our chairman of the chamber, and the devastating fire that he had just recently. So keep them in your prayers, if you will. I want to thank the chamber staff for putting this thing together today. It's something different. It's totally different than we've had before. We're streaming it. We're safe, and we encourage others to continue to use the chamber. We've got a great chamber, and we've got a great staff, and we appreciate all the efforts. One other comment. The school systems are preparing to open pretty soon. Dyersburg State, Dyer County, and Dyersburg. And we're wishing you the best because we think and know that a lot of people think the kids need to be back in school. And I think the preparation has been quite extensive to get the kids back and to get them educated. And we appreciate your leadership, the superintendents of both the city and the county and others involved. And I know this is going to be a little difficult situation with this classroom size and distancing and all those things. But let's continue to practice all of those that we need to do. Stay safe in Dyer County. We got the greatest county. We got good representatives representing us in Nashville. And we appreciate your support of this chamber. And thank you and have a pleasant day. We adjourn.